Listen up. There's no more excuses. We're empowering those who want the hustle by exposing the status quo.
The days of ordinary are over.
It's time to crush mediocrity and start discovering your greatest potential.
Welcome to the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation.
To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today, pretty excited. We've got Mr. Colin Henderson in the house. Colin is founder at Master Your Mindset and Limitless Minds mental conditioning coach. Colin, welcome to the show.
Chris, you have a great voice for podcasts. I'm excited to be here. That's awesome.
I've been told I have a
too. Yeah,
I have a face for radio, I think.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, welcome. I appreciate you being here. And we're kind of at this interesting phase of the podcast where 75 episodes in, we just continue to get better and better guests. And one of our previous guests, who was amazing, Hannah Pryor, had connected us. And when she told me about you and kind of your journey and your story and what you do, I said, yes, please make that connection. But before we get into all that fun stuff, Colin, tell everyone a little bit more about your journey and how you got to where you are now.
That's great. Well, first, thanks, Hannah, for the intro, and Chris and Dustin. It's an honor to be on the show. So excited to have these conversations. But I guess what got me here was, I think like a lot of people who are in business and sales, or I was a student athlete, is I got into this trap of getting my self-worth tied to outcomes. So if you thought about how young performers, whether it's dance, band, music, choir, debate, sport, when they do something, they look over to the parent, and how was that? They need that validation, or from their coach or from a teammate. And for whatever reason, at a young age, I was a good athlete, I was a good student, but I would get my self-worth tied to performance. I remember when I was in second grade playing football, I scored a bunch of touchdowns, and after the game, a parent said, "Oh, you're number 42. You're really good at football." So my identity right there as a young human, if I do well, people give me praise. So that just external validation carried me as a college student athlete. After graduate school, I got into sales, and I got this unhealthy attachment to my value is tied to if I'm validated by other people. So, and it hit a really rough patch where I just kind of was stressed out and anxious and wasn't thriving. And I had a great mentor that showed me a new path. And he was a sales trainer, and he talked about, Colin, sales psychology beats sales strategy. Thoughts become things. Like attracts like. What you resist persists. There's these books on business, but I'm telling you, the mind is the gateway to greatness. So there are three things we can train as performers: our body, our craft, and our mind. And I'm guessing most business people, executives, CEOs, sales leaders on this podcast, listen, first of all, thank you for showing up, are spending most of their time on craft, on the spreadsheets, on the market, on sales tactics. And I'm guessing as leaders, we're not probably checking in on rest, recovery, hydration, sleep. That's body, but it's usually craft. But no one's talking about their mental fitness. And a great question I use to warm up leaders on how they're managing and serving is, give me the traits of the top performers that you've ever coached, you ever worked with, the best sellers, the best, people in marketing, whatever their role is. And they say words like resilience and confidence, self-awareness, courage, creativity, authenticity. I'm like, are you training those? They're like, no, we're not. And I didn't train those until I was exposed to a mentor. And I just got this exposure to this like life-giving concepts and an outlet of best thinkers, teachers, writers. And I just started consuming this stuff. And I was not only healthier, but I was setting sales records. So after that time, I started writing blogs, started writing books, and now I speak full time on these things. So that's why I'm excited to have a platform to invite leaders and people. If you're not working on your mental wellness, you're being negligent.
So let's dig into that a little bit. When you talk about mental wellness, mental health, mindset, right? So I feel like those are a lot of terms that are being used in lots of different ways today, right? The mental health struggles people are having, how are we changing, our mindset? Curious, and through your lens, how do those kind of interact, and how do you kind of go through stages of working on them to improve your overall mental health, your overall mindset, your overall approach?
That's a great question. I like to help people who are in the space of learning on the power of the mind. What should I do? So I look at mental training in two facets. Being a college student athlete, go Cougs, Washington State. We don't have a conference right now. We're in the two-pack. Hopefully, in a few years we'll rearrange. I know that the Badgers are in a good conference right now in the Big Ten. I will say I have done mental performance work for Wisconsin's basketball team, the men and the women, 2 years ago. So shout out to the Badgers real quick. But so think of the weight room and the training room. So the training room is if there's an injury. And there's a licensed trained professional to help that athlete recover, to heal, to rehab a shoulder, a knee, a hip, a back. I look at that in the mental wellness space. That's therapy. That is counseling, and that is going to some deeper issues, some really hard things that people are going through. And we need a training room and we need therapy. I mean, these are just facts in the overall wellness space. Now, the weight room is what I call prehab. So we're going to do proactive work to have agility, endurance, explosiveness to prevent injury. Mental conditioning is that. That's what I do. So when I say things like confidence and mindfulness and how to visualize and self-talk and grit and culture and leadership, everyone needs these skills from day one. So it's interesting. You don't see a strength coach and the only time they're utilized if an athlete, hey, can you help me with this lift? No, like every athlete is going through a program to strengthen their body. I'm of the belief that every human from a young age to the corporate athlete should have a mental conditioning coach to navigate adversity, challenge, change, and success.
Excellent. So
we're not waiting for problems, Dustin. We are being proactive. And see, I get excited. You're about to say something, but I just think we're looking at the data right now. 75 to 90% of USA doctor visits are caused by stress. Over 1 million Americans are missing work each day due to stress. 63% of USA workforce, they are so stressed they want to quit their job. So if we're not doing these things for our mental wellness proactively, we are being negligent, Dustin.
Well, I love that analogy because it gives the visual, right? So if somebody had a broken leg, you wouldn't have them doing squats, right? But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be doing anything to keep themselves strong, to keep themselves fit, right? Like, and I love that, the kind of prehab, rehab. I think that's a great visual for people because I feel like so many times, anytime we're talking about the mind, people conflate all these different things and get confused, and they'll talk about, I love the way you said it, right? The more proactive things you can do to make your mind stronger, and which, to your point, does flow into the body, does flow into your approach of every day, but also recognizing there are things you might need to address, right? You might have some lagging injuries that need to be addressed too.
That's true.
I love that.
Colin, I want to go back in time a little bit. Your career, LinkedIn suggests that you were in sales and a switch flipped. Now, I know there's a lot more to that. And you got into Limitless Minds and Master Your Mindset. I want to know how that journey began and how you got into what you're doing now.
I love that. Well, I was seeing such transformation in my life once I was exposed to concepts and teachers. So when I got exposed to these concepts, I was just so curious and hungry. I was reading like 5 books a month for like 2 years. I was covering 5 states, selling catheters to urologists and hospitals. And when you're managing that territory, you have a lot of drive time. So I was listening to audiobooks and videos on YouTube and just on the power of thought, the power of thinking, the power of your inner voice, just concepts that I just have never spent time on. And while I was seeing this transformation and I was seeing results, I was thinking, more people need to hear the good news. There's ways to navigate self-doubt and imposter syndrome and crippling anxiety proactively. And I was just like, why has this not been taught to me until I was 32 years old? Like, this is a travesty. So after 2 years, I just had a lot of success, and people were asking me, "What are you doing in Seattle?" Because for the last 10 years, no one has ever had success there. Like, you can't access these offices, these accountants, hospitals. Access is shut down, and it wasn't because of sales strategy; it was because sales psychology. I had a set of mental skills on curiosity, courage, confidence, clarity, dreaming big, serving bigger, and it was all trained. I trained these things like in real time every single day, journaling and mindfulness and how to visualize. So I was like, well, I want people to know what I've experienced. So I started blogging. This is old school. So in 2016, I started a blog called Project Rise, projectrise.blogspot.com, old school. This was before TikTok. This was before Vine, before people were going like blogging. Like, I was literally spending 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours a week typing concepts and bringing all this learning I've done and try to crystallize it into like methods and into systems. I love author James Cleary says, when we rise our goals, we fall to the level of our system. So I was taking all this stuff I was learning. It was really like a diary. I was just sharing concepts that I wanted people to learn that I was learning. And then I wrote a book, several books. But here's what everything changed, Chris. And this is where I want to shed light on why I do what I do. I was at Sumner High School teaching at a leadership class. And the title of my talk was The Power of Thought. Like, do we think about our thoughts? Do we think about our thinking? Probably not. And after I was done with my session, the teacher at the time was the head coach in basketball. He's like, Colin, that was really powerful, man. Hey, I want you to look up Trevor Moawad. He's the mental conditioning coach for Alabama, and he works with Russell Wilson. I had known Russ for a few years. I never met Trevor. And I said, mental conditioning coach? What is that? So I looked up Trevor, and I saw all the work he was doing with Kirby Smart, with Nick Saban, with Navy SEALs, with NBA teams, MLB teams. He was this kind of pioneer of like normalizing mindset work. And then there were interviews where Russell Wilson at the time had the most wins of any quarterback in the first 5-10 years of his career. He was giving, hey, I want to just give a shout out to my mindset coach, and he would name his name. I was like, okay, Trevor Moawad. So I started to research that, and I saw this is possible. This area that I've kind of delved into is a career path. And long story short, Trevor and I met in a year or two later, and I learned under Trevor, and we started creating content. And so that's how I got started. Limitless Minds. Come on.
That's amazing.
I love that story. See, I knew that there was a deep story in there somewhere. And I think that's kind of where some of the magic happens. But now let's talk about what is Limitless Minds now. Who are you working with, and who are you helping?
Limitless Minds is a company or organization where, Russ has an older brother, and Harry Wilson was in the space in device and selling to doctors, hospitals. He was a manager, and he was thinking, okay, so Russell is getting mental conditioning coaching for the NFL. As a pharma manager, why shouldn't my team get mental conditioning concepts that Russ is getting? Because resilience and failure and adversity. So Harrison brought Trevor in to speak to the company that he was working with, and it went over really well. So then they decided to, well, let's scale this and let's bring these concepts to more organizations. And I think that was like 2018. So we've utilized several other speakers and teachers. And we actually if you're a coach with Limitless Minds, we call ourselves room tilters. And here's an interesting story. So when John Schneider, the GM for the Seahawks, was watching Russell Wilson playing for Wisconsin, Harry Wilson was in the hotel lobby at a restaurant bar hanging out, and John Schneider sits next to Harry. And they just had a conversation. And I think Harry asked John Schneider, hey, when you're looking for who to draft, like what are you looking for? Because obviously Russ is not the typical 6'4", version of a quarterback. And John Snyder like paused for a moment and looked to Harry. He's like, "You know, what we're looking for. We're looking for a quarterback who can tilt a room, who can walk in and have presence, have poise, have that demeanor, have that quiet confidence." So, because if you're leading 10 other people out in the huddle, when you're leading a team of 53 gentlemen, on the sidelines on Sundays when things are rugged, hard, tough, it's a violent sport. Like, can you tilt a room? And he said, Russell tilts rooms, and that's what we want as a quarterback on our team. So Harry, he's like, all of our coaches are going to be room tilters. So we don't call ourselves coaches; we call ourselves room tilters.
Now, did Harry relinquish the fact that he was Russell's brother at that time at the end of the conversation?
Oh no, he knew. They knew. I mean, they look almost identical. Harry would say he's the more handsome, more intelligent, younger looking older brother. But he knew that they're brothers.
So when you talk about tilting a room, to your point of the conditioning to that, right? So not everyone can just naturally do that. If someone has elements of it but wants to have the care, what do those characteristics look like? What are the behaviors that you've seen or that you condition for so that someone can tilt a room?
So I have what I call I am statements. I have anchor statements that I think help me tilt a room or anybody that I'm coaching. So the three are: I am authentic, I am present, I am courageous. So tilting a room is just be you. Everyone else is already taken. You should be the next you. So whatever your secret sauce is, whatever your background, whatever your passion, joy, like be more of you, because there's enough of people trying to be like other people. So your story and your quirks, bringing your humor into it. But I just also think the best leaders are just fully connected to the here and now. So listening, being fully engaged, not being on your phone, not listening to respond, but listen to understand. But the last one is, if you're going to tilt a room, then you got to have courage. And part of being courageous is being vulnerable. The best thing you can do as a leader, as a speaker, is to not highlight all your wins, but showcase how you failed, your fears, how you've been knocked down, and the things you've learned to get back up. So those are three that I just came up with.
And courageous is the one that really jumped out to me, because I agree that a lot of people that will talk about being authentic, but I think part of the challenge is, one of the challenges people have about being authentic is they're not courageous enough, right? They're afraid of judgment. They're afraid of failure, right? They're afraid of what someone else is going to say about them. And so they they're not comfortable in their own skin. And, to your point of training, just training yourself, training your mind that, this is who I am, and I'm totally comfortable in it. And there'll always be critics, but there'll be critics whether you're doing nothing or doing something. So you might as well go be you. And I love that concept of being courageous, of just getting out there.
Yeah. Well, you miss every shot you don't take. And I think fear is the biggest stopper of anything that we're up against. Like fear of what other people think, fear of messing up, fear of not looking intelligent. Fear, again, what other people think is probably the biggest hurdle. But I think in leadership, the cornerstone of leadership is having courage, because you're going to not always be liked. There's going to be some conflict. You're going to have to put your ideas out there. And so if you can just practice the mental skill of being vulnerable and being truthful and being honest with your values and your needs, and also putting the team first, I think that sometimes is hard, where you're going to have to suppress your ego to what's best for this group.
Colin, what about the word decisiveness? So I think about that as from an athlete's perspective, and not that I was any elite athlete by any stretch of the imagination. However, when I think about an athlete like a quarterback, you have to be very decisive, and you can't just look off a receiver and then look the other way and then look back again, because that window is closed now, right? And the same is true of a leader, whether it be in a boardroom, whether it be in a meeting. I think it's confidence in making a decision and sticking with it, because when you see people who waffle or who are just, I don't know, and they're always that way, it shows a sign, maybe a lack of confidence. I'm just curious if that's maybe in this framework too.
Yeah, I think people suffer from paralysis by analysis, and they want everyone's approval, and they waffle, they wave, and they need this like 10,000 step process. And at that point, we've already moved on and it's already too late. And I think it is a mental skill to evaluate, gather information, and trust your instincts, trust your training, trust your values and your purpose, and decide. So it's not ready, aim, fire. It's fire, aim, ready. Because we're going to learn way faster if we're getting feedback that this didn't work. We can pivot from it. So let's just do a quick little mindset lesson. Hopefully everyone's ready to take some notes.
Let's
We're in
go.
the mind gym today. So you said the word confidence. And so I want to just ask the audience and ask you, Chris and Dustin, where do you think the number one source of confidence, what is that from? We all can agree that in leadership and sales, confidence is a good thing, right?
Yeah,
So where does confidence come from?
Previous success.
Or just experience. Yep.
So you've had past success and you have experience. Well, have you ever had success in the area, you had experience, you're in the moment, and you fail, you mess up, and you suck? That's happened to all of us, correct? So that's part of the equation. But research from the BBC lab in the UK, 44,000 patients measuring confidence, they found that self-talk was the number one driver of confident action. Your inner voice. What you say to yourself has 10 times the power. Now let's talk about being decisive. Hannah actually shared with me a study that came out of China about a year ago. They're looking at, well, what type of self-talk is the most effective to elevate performance? And the three that they measured was motivational, educational, and decisive self-talk. Of those three, which aided performance the most? The answer is decisive self-talk. So if it's self-talk gets you motivated, hey, you can do this, let's go, that type of stuff. If it's educational, you're instructing, okay, we're going to have, we're going to change voice and tone, we're going to, whatever it is to educate yourself. But decisive is, I'm going to commit to this action, this plan. I'm going to shrink my focus. The best focus on less, no more. I'm going to decide I'm going to move forward now. And that is a skill that takes practice.
Well, we see that all the time, right? I mean, the number one reason people aren't successful in whatever they're doing is they lack action, right? You talk about paralysis analysis. So when you talk about that decisive self-talk, I'm reminded, I had a discussion with a friend of mine recently who, was talking about kind of starting his own business, right? And he's got this kind of consulting element in this very specific industry that he has a ton of experience in. He's got some of the, biggest national brands that are asking him basically, they basically want to hire him, but he's like, he likes his gig and, really he can just be a consultant, but he's hesitant because of that first step. Right. And, we were just having that conversation just, even a few weeks ago where I'm like, just go, right? Because just have the first conversation. Like, don't worry about the 10th step. Just have the next thing. But between that and 7 other conversations I've had in the last 2 weeks, how do you get people, to change that talk, right? To change that talk into action, because I see it so often where people are so concerned about the 7th step. I'll use Chris on me, right? When we first were talking about starting this podcast, right? I had the 17 questions back to him. I was like, well, how are we going to do this? 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 And he's like, I have no idea, but we're going to do the first episode. And it's going to suck and it's going to be awful. And we're going to make a bunch of mistakes, but we're just going to do the first episode. I'm like, all right, what's the worst that
I didn't say it was going to be awful, but it was.
Well, maybe I said it was good. maybe it was awful. So there you go. But
if it wasn't awful, then you're not growing. I mean, it has to be awful.
Yeah.
It's part of the journey. So I think you're asking, how do you get started? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. How do you get to change that mindset? Right. So like in my case, right, I had an outside party that just like, stop, just, we're doing it. Right. But I think a lot of times to your point, we're stopped in our own minds from doing things. And, what are those, what is those prehab, conditioning that we can do to start changing our mind to just saying, just take some action, create some decisiveness?
Well, I think the first thing is just changing our perspective that no one's judging you the way you're thinking they are. And it's this truth. You aren't who you think you are. You aren't who others think you are what you think other people think you are. And they're not even thinking about you. No one goes to bed thinking about your mistakes. So you think you're so important, they're going to be critiquing, judging this first episode? Yeah, right. They probably won't even listen to it.
Right.
Yeah. So what, hold up, you're that important where you think everyone's going to be critiquing and watching and judging? They're not. They're worried about their own crap.
Yeah.
So I think that the first is your perspective is you're loved, but you're just not that important. I mean, you're amazing and we're thankful you're on this planet, but no one's going to be judging that. So if you're making your choices on what you think other people think, here's just reality. They're not thinking about you. I'm sorry. They have their own life mess that they're worried about. So that would be kind of step one. But I always go back to Newton's first law, which is an idle stays an idle, an object in motion stays in motion. And it's the start that stops most people. Mm-hmm. So I teach a system called M3, movement, momentum, then motivation. So if you can have the habit of starting small and progressing over time and creating an environment where that first step is an easy step, get an early win, a simple early win. And it's just movement. Have a bias fraction and really start moving. But you have to backward design. Okay, our goal is to do a podcast, which I have a podcast. We started, I think, 5 years ago. And I told Tanner Pierce, T Money, who is my co-host, also runs the show. He produces it. I said, Tanner, we're gonna master this concept of a bracelet, process over outcome. We're not gonna judge views or listens until we've done 100 shows. Because really, it's the process that's most important. It's the process, not the pressure. Process, not the prize. And we can't get good until we do a lot of episodes. We got to get our reps in.
Yeah.
So we're going to shift from a fixed mindset from Carol Dweck. Fixed mindset is, I am who I am. It is what it is. You get validation on image and results only, where a growth mindset is all about validation and effort. And you want feedback. And when other people have success, you're gonna cheer them on and celebrate it. So I would just say, no one's judging us. So let's do it for us. I think the best art, this is from Rick Rubin, the best art is made when it's done for you because you love it, you're curious about it, you're doing it because it's filling an energy need that you have inside of you. The best art comes from within, not from outside. Because if you're trying to do, creation that pleases other people, it's not going to be good. One of my favorite stories on this is from Eminem. And he was interviewed one time and he said, my career changed when one shift happened. Because my first album, he said, I made it to get listens on the radio. Because in the 90s, it was either BET or MTV or radio. There wasn't Spotify. There wasn't TikTok. He said, I made an album that I thought people want to hear. He said it was garbage. He said, but once I stopped giving, he said the F word, once I stopped giving an F, people started giving an F. And I made an album that I doubled down on. This character I created called Slim Shady. Like I was just going crazy. I made music for me, and that's when I blew up. So I think do art for you.
Colin, I want to kind of riff off that for a moment because I remember I lived in Detroit for a while, a long time ago, and I interviewed for a job at Quicken Loans. And I had a friend who told me, they're like, before you take the interview, I want you to do something. Quicken has their, we'll just call them core values. They call them isms, Quicken Loan isms. And I want you to read them. And I think there's like 15 of them. And the one that resonated with me the most, and I talk about this quite a bit to the day when I speak, because it just, I think it shows its head in a lot of the things that I do. And it was, good is good enough. And up until that time, everywhere I had ever worked before was, good is not good enough. Good will not get it done. Good will not get you a promotion. I always grew up thinking that perfect was what you wanted. And they said, I asked my friend this question before I interviewed. I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, if you put an extra hour into that project, that spreadsheet, that if you're in marketing, maybe it's a graphic design, it's probably not any better. It might be better in your eyes, but you're just wasting your time because then you get less done. And there's long conversation about if good is good enough, you get 10% more done every day. And this is how it impacts the bottom line and revenue, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, holy shit, like that makes sense. Like, let's get the best out of everyone rather than having them fear, well, it's not perfect. It's not going to be acceptable. That to me was a culture shift. And that was a culture I wanted to be a part of. What's your thoughts on that?
I love it. Yeah, I think the perfect way to fail a goal is to try to do it perfectly. And I call this the 80% rule of leadership. How many times do you see leaders try to control everything and they don't delegate, or they micromanage, or they overly criticize? If someone on your team does it at 80% of how good you would do it, take it. Take it every single time. Because if it's at 80%, maybe it's like not how you would do it, but that's the beauty of having a team that is different and they give their flavor of it. If it's 80% of how you want to see it, you have to take it, because if you overanalyze and if you're so consumed on the image of being perfect, you're not creating great work. And there's a study done in Florida, the Gators, University of Florida, where they're looking at a photography class. And they did an experiment. They had two groups. Group one, their assignment was to turn in, their graded was on one perfect picture. The professor was going to grade these students on one perfect picture. Group two, they're graded on volume. Experiment, try. You're just going to be graded on high volume of the pictures and the photos you're able to curate. So which quality in the end of this semester produced the best picture? The perfect picture or the group that was about volume?
Got to be the volume, right?
Volume.
The volume one. Why? Because they were taking risks. They were trying different things. They weren't overly planning for 6 months, lighting and shade and I have no idea. I'm not talking about it. We just say have a bias for action early in the process. Watch this. I want quantity over quality, and over time that ratio is gonna swap, because you're gonna get your skills are gonna get better, your eyes are gonna get better, your ability to recognize what you need to do more efficient, speed is gonna improve. So I just think, man, when you're starting out something, let's get those reps in. And then I think we should have a culture where we celebrate failure.
What's up, listeners? I just wanted to say thank you for being a part of the Hustle Nation community. We are absolutely thrilled and honored that you listen to our show. I wanted to take a break to share a special resource with you. I'm talking about our 2020 Vision Guide. This is a pivotal tool we use in our workshops, where participants typically invest thousands of dollars for transformative experiences. Imagine having a crystal clear, actionable roadmap to not just meet, but exceed your personal and professional goals. That's the power of the 2020 Vision Guide. And here's the best part. We're offering it to you for free. This is your chance to leverage a tool that has propelled hundreds of people achieve unparalleled success. Visit our website now. I'm including the URL in the show notes below, where you can download our guide and start your journey toward clarity and achievement. Don't wait. It's time to create the life you deserve today. Now back to the show. I often tell entrepreneurs that, rather than trying something, so, for example, coming from a marketing background, people are like, oh, Chris, I tried Facebook ads. They don't work. Or I tried TikTok. It doesn't work. And I'm like, well, tell me more. How long did you try it for? Well, I posted 2 videos and, after a month of not seeing anything, I just quit. And then I said, you know what you are? You're a toe dipper. You're not going to be able to enjoy the water if you don't jump in the deep end. So why don't you jump in the deep end with me, take some laps, and then, we'll teach you how to swim. But so often, unless you're committed, and I like that, committed to frequency there, you're not going to learn, right? And if you are learning with those reps and those at-bats, you're just going to continually get better. And that's where I tell people, stop thinking about how long the video has to be or what music it should be or what is the right caption. It's like, you'll figure it out on your own with reps.
I know, but
it sounds like with reps.
But it sounds like they're doing it for the result only. And they're getting their worth of validation by this made up result that they're thinking they need to get. And one of my favorite concepts to teach in the Mind Gym is a term coined by Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, which is flow. Being in a flow state. So being in flow is the most optimal state you can be in as a human being. So there's no sense of time, there's no past, there's no future. You have a clear goal or a clear thing you're working towards. You have a sense of challenge, but this is, I think, the number one beautiful trait of being in flow is the activity is the reward, not the outcome. I'll say it again. The activity is the reward. not how many views, not how many likes, not whether how many you sold in the first week. So I would challenge any performer is, if you're not doing something that you love or that you're curious about, it's hard to be great. It's hard to be world class. So when I told T Money in our podcast, we're not even going to look at views until we've done 100, because I want to get in there and record episodes and bring value and serve. And I want to interview people. I want to learn from them. Like, this is not about views. This is about our growth.
Yep.
So I think if we can shift our mind and our focus, because energy flows where focus goes. If your focus is external validation, if your focus is extrinsic, you're going to suffer, and it's not going to be a fun process. So to really find your flow is, what are you curious about? What do you think about? What do you talk about? What do you research? Do more of that. Because if you can do more of what makes you come alive, you're going to create, any type of or articles or music or teachings or books, or if you're mentoring, that is going to help you bring value.
And that genuine curiosity allows you to learn with those reps. There's plenty of people that have maybe they've even done maybe sufficient reps, but they're doing them mindlessly. And it's because they're really not curious about it. To your point, they're so married to the result as opposed to the process. We talk about it like in hustle, right? Like the E is enjoy the process, because if you're not curious, you're not enjoying the process, at some point, you're just going to get burnt out because you're not applying it to really what you care about. Right. And everyone cares about different things. But I think I totally agree with this quantity over quality concept, as long as people are learning, right? And not slowing themselves down with learning, right? To your point, if you have so many reps, you don't need to learn a lot on each rep. You just
1%.
Yeah. You can learn so little in each rep, but if you learn just that little bit, man, it adds up so quick.
Well, and I want to add one more thing to this. I think, how do we get flow reps where that critic brain is shut off? We all have this inner judge. Do y'all know what % of human thoughts are actually negative?
70%.
60.
Okay. Research from the National Science Foundation have equated that humans, it's 80% of human thoughts are negative and 95% of human thoughts are recurring. So
we're
what
above
can
the
we,
average.
y'all are, maybe
Better than the average.
And the conscious mind, we say around 6,000 thoughts. On a subconscious level, I've read research up to 70,000. So just to do simple math, if we're averaging 50,000 subconscious thoughts per day, that's 40,000 negative thoughts.
Wow.
So what can we do to quiet the noise? What can we do to find flow? And before I get into that, can you ask the question one more time? I went on a little riff there.
No, I'm blanking.
What was
on
the question,
I
Chris?
asked.
Did you ask it? Yeah, what was it? 'Cause I started I was setting up my answer and I forgot the question.
I don't know. Like, I'm so deep into this conversation, I don't even know what the question was.
Yeah, because I was taking you down a journey there, and then I had to get back to what was the objective. I don't know if you guys edited.
Yeah, you were talking about. I think, Dustin, you were talking about being mindless, doing so many things mindlessly.
Yes, and learning it with each rep.
Oh yeah,
we can edit that out.
Okay, no, we're gonna jump right back in now. Okay, now the reason why I asked you, are you aware of how negative your mind is because I think a huge miss that we have in leadership and in the corporate workspace is we are forgetting that the brain learns better when we're having fun. So if you look at brain research, I read an article recently that it takes up to 400 reps to learn a new skill. Now watch this. If we're in a state of play, it takes as low as 12 reps to master a new skill. Because your brain is firing dopamine, serotonin, maybe even oxytocin. And it's opening up this childlike mind of what is possible. Because when we get to be an adult, man, your brain is now a junk drawer because it's been storing what I call trauma and drama daddy and mama shit. It's been,
I love that.
It's been storing all your mistakes, all your failures, what can't be done. And we get so serious. Man, that's why I love watching kids play. I love watching kids daydream. And children have this powerful skill to dream big. And every year we get older, that power gets weaker and weaker. We focus on what we can do. Are we liked? Do I seem intelligent? And I see leaders, they would rather protect their intelligence than creating impact for their team, where they're really trying to protect their ego versus growth. So this is an invitation to you to get into more flow. Let's have more fun. And let's make these interactions and these challenges. Let's do some competitions. Let's do some interactions. Let's do some games. Let's involve people and get into a state of like, we're laughing, we're thinking, we're having fun.
Colin, I want to ask you about this because this is really resonating with me, and a lot of the marketing framework that I've built up over the years is that, I'll make a long story very quick, is for years I got paid a lot of money to build big strategies. And they were so long and so much fluff now that I look back, 40 pages, right? And I thought I was impressing people. And then I'd come back in 3 months and then nobody was using them, right? Because the thought of that document was just stressful and gave them anxiety. And then I realized, like, okay, well, let's cut it in half. That should be better, right? And it really wasn't much better, like maybe 5% better. And then I was tasked to speak at an event, and someone said, hey, Chris, I want you to speak about marketing strategy, social media. These people are going to be novices. Anything you say will overwhelm them. Can you get strategy down to 1 page? And I was like, I don't know if that's possible. And then, Chris, that's the trick for you here. That's the one thing, your assignment. So I did. And I never had so many people come up to me after and say, Chris, can I get a copy of that framework that you created, 1-page marketing strategy? And I was like, yeah, sure. Did it again, same thing. And then I realized that for marketing specifically, and we've seen this with sales and leadership too, is that it has to be easy. And when it's easy, it's fun. So I just wrote a book called Marketing So Easy, It's Fun Again, So Easy You'll Have No Excuses. And you said making things fun. I think it's got to be fun and easy, but those two kind of go hand in hand. It's amazing to me in life, and this may be one of the biggest lessons I've learned, is that the easier we make things, the more fun they are. But we're having fun because we're generating results due to the fact that we made it easy.
I love
Do you
that.
believe that's true?
I sometimes call myself Captain Obvious. All I'm trying to do is, if I'm working with anybody that hires me, whether it's an executive or a pro athlete or a young performer, anybody I'm working with, is I subscribe to this truth. Complexity is the enemy to execution. So again, complexity is the enemy to execution. So the best focus on less, not more. And Chris, we agree. I think if a business plan is more than 1 page, you won't do it.
Yeah. 100%.
And how many times have you seen organizations have a mission statement, these values, and a purpose statement, but no one knows it because it's 5 paragraphs. It's the fact that the organization
almost
that you mentioned, 15, I guess, core values or principles, you could remember one of them. I think that is an indication. So I like things in 3s. I think things in 3s. There's a reason why telephone numbers have 2 dashes to separate those numbers, because you have groups of 3 that you can numerically in your mind separate. That's why our social security has 3 sets of numbers broken up, so it's easier to remember. So if you can't break down what's most important, your values, what we're doing in the strategy into 3s, it's gonna be hard to do.
Good point.
So as we look at, if there's somebody listening that's saying, okay, what's the first thing or the number one thing, whichever you prefer, that someone could do, step they could take to start towards this mental conditioning path?
I would say, thank you for asking that. So here's a question I would maybe throw out to you before I give my answer. How important is our mental fitness from a scale from 1 to 10?
It's got to be a 9 or 10. If you don't,
Yeah.
if your head's not right, I don't know how
8.
anything else is.
Does it vary by person?
But like, why would your mental wellness not be a 10? I'm really curious. Like, can you argue with me why your mental wellness is not a 10 out of 10 of importance?
Because it's not.
Why do you say 8 and 9? I know. But no, I'm saying the importance of, do you have kids? Like, do you want your kids to be mentally, emotionally fit and well? Well, then the question 2 is, scale from 1 to 10, how much time are you proactively training your mental fitness? and it's lower than a 10, correct?
Right.
And
Right.
here's the problem, is because you have 1,000,001 coaches on how to be fit physically. You got Pilates, yoga, gym, strength training, Peloton. But how many mental conditioning or mental fitness coaches have you ever talked to?
Yeah.
Very
Just a
few.
couple, maybe.
Or you've hired a coach. So I would say I have a few, but if I'm coaching anybody, there are a few baseline questions I ask. The first question I ask is, where's your focus? Our focus can be 1 to 3 time frames, past, present, future. Are you aware of how much time you spend either reliving shame, mistake, fear, regret, or pre-living fear, outcomes, results versus these flow thoughts of being fully present in the moment? So step 1 is, where are you right now? Are you here? If you're not, you have the power to notice and redirect and be right in the present moment. The next question I would ask is, how is your self-talk? Do you think about your thoughts? Do you think about your thinking? Is it random or is it by design? So I teach performers how to pre-plan their thought life and to write down things you want to say to yourself, things you want to describe yourself as, things you want to focus on. Because like I mentioned, you probably have a junk drawer in your house, correct? That's like
I'll
your
do.
brain. It's
Yep.
not organized. It's all this crap is from years of whatever you're doing is just not organized. So mental conditioning is taking out that junk drawer and organizing thoughts, words, and actions you want to embody. So I say by design, not by default. By design, not by default. And what we say to ourselves has 10 times the power. So
Yeah.
by taking control of your focus, where's my focus? Step 2 is, what language am I using to describe myself and my environment and challenge? Because language is the wardrobe of our beliefs. You become what you think about most of the time. So when I watched Trevor train Russell, you know what most of their time was scripting how he would talk to himself. Would be scripting
Right.
what he would be saying on the sidelines. Because words drive action. And the last one I would help anybody do is not wait for problems, but have a daily system to use mental imagery to carve out and design neural pathways and images and feelings that you want to experience. So I'll end with this maybe drill that anybody can do at any point of the day. I call it the 4-minute mental workout, or
Let's do it.
the HA method. It's an acronym. I know hustle is an acronym. I'm gonna give you one. It's called the HA method. It's I have, I am, I will. So we would agree that Chris and Dustin, that elite focus is important in business, in sales, and leadership in life.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
Well, how do you
Yep.
train elite focus?
Great question.
Well, I'll give you a drill.
I'm hoping you're giving us the answer.
I'll give you a drill. This has been for thousands of years, like the samurai would teach this, is just learn how to breathe. Just give yourself 1 minute. Your only objective is to do nothing but focus on your inhale and your exhale. Because thoughts are going to come and go. There's a part of our brain called the default mode network, and that is usually activated when we're in these states of idleness. So when you're in states of idleness, are you dwelling on your past mistakes? Are you creating anxiety and fear because of what will go on in the future? Or have you trained your default mode network to be still? I am safe. I am here. And when you have a slow exhale, it tells your subconscious you're not in danger. And when you have a slow, deliberate, concentrated breath, it tells your nervous system, I'm good. I'm good. So listeners, today, just give yourself 3 to 5 just slow deep breaths, and just your only job is to, you might notice a thought, don't judge it, don't critique it, just gently come back to your breath. Every time you do this, it's like doing bicep curls for your brain. Now, the next 3 minutes is what I call the HA method. It's an acronym. So the H is I have. So give me 1 minute of gratitude. Gratitude has been proven, research out of Cal Davis, to lower cortisol by nearly 30%. It boosts your immune system. It lowers inflammation. There's really good data out of Duke that people who are grateful and optimistic are more resilient, and they make more money in business. They win more in sports. So gratitude is a trained skill. Do you focus on what you have or what you don't have? Is it lack, scarcity, or is it abundance? And then the A of the Ha is I am. So that's powerful self-talk. Now, it may sound weird speaking kindly to yourself, but before a sales call, imagine what happens if you're like, they're not going to like what I have to say. I don't think I'm intelligent enough for this. Man, if I lose this deal, I'm missing out on a lot of money. Don't stutter. So basically, what I'm giving examples of is it begins before it begins. It begins before it begins. So you're conditioning negative things, outcomes you don't want, things about yourself. And the number one driver of behavior, according to James Clear, is identity. So when you have statements of I am, but it's followed by not intelligent, I'm an imposter, I don't know my stuff, you're going to subconsciously act out in the way that you verbalize because thoughts become things. So you would condition elite championship self-talk every single day. If there's one skill I can teach any child, it's how you speak to yourself. And parents, how you speak to your kids becomes their self-talk. Now, the last one is I will, is you set your intention and you visualize, you experience the things you want to achieve as if you have them now. Neurons that fire together wire together. You literally can create neural pathways and mental grooves by our thoughts. The brain and the body cannot tell the difference between what is real and what is imagined. Breathe. I am, I will. Oh wait, you don't got 4 minutes, Chris?
That's amazing.
Don't act like you're not on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook for at least 40 minutes. Come on.
It's tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Very true. I always said this too, is that, if it's important to you, you'll put it on your calendar. If it's important to you, you'll make time for it. And that's when it's a priority. But if it's not a priority, you're not going to make time for it. And that's the sad and unfortunate truth for many people.
That's the 4 minutes.
Yeah. It's only 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And I tell people, like I had someone tell me the other day, like, Chris, well, I don't have time to read as much as you. And I said, well, I'm only on my 19th book this year. So I really don't read that much. It's probably average 15, 20 minutes a day. And on the weekends, sometimes I get through 2 or 3 hours. And that's what it all adds up to. It's a very small amount of time every day that when I said to you, I'm on my 19th book in 5 months, it sounds like a lot, but really it's not that much. And I'm not even a fast reader. So like, oh, well, it's a priority for me. So it's, I make time for it every day.
Well, and Chris, if you go to Audible and go 1.7 speed, you can cut that time in half. That's what I like to do.
I'm 1.3. I can't absorb things as well at that speed. 1.5 is about the max.
Yeah, so
I think you're in flow state, obviously.
Well, trying to, but it's a trained skill to listen and to absorb, that type of thing. I've been doing it for a long time though, but I would just encourage anybody listening now is if you're having self-doubt, if you're having fear, if you feel stuck, that's actually a normal emotion. We all have seasons of life like that. But I'm guessing it's probably your brain has had atrophy and you've been conditioning yourself on what's possible by your environment, by your past, you're comparing stuff on Instagram. So this is from Marcus Aurelius. The quality of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. So if you can start to design thinking and energy, words on your terms, and start to pay attention and notice what I call ANTs, automatic negative thoughts. Notice those, don't judge them. This is called cognitive diffusion. Recognize them and move to a place in your brain that you've already written down, you've journaled, you've thought about it, you have a place that you've already thought through. You can pre-plan your thought life just like you would pre-plan meals. And you would get your reps in every single day. And you would also have a drill like what I taught you, the HA method, is, after you work out, get your mental sweat on. Don't just exercise, you got to exercise. And you can stack these wins. And again, you become what you think about. So doing these daily drills, I promise you, I'm going to prove your life will change.
I love that. Collin, we've gone so deep. I've covered so much in this episode. Thank you so much for being here. That was incredible. Before I let you off the hook, can you tell our listeners where they can find you, what you've got going on, website, podcast, whatever else?
Yeah, the best way probably to connect with me is on Instagram, which is at Colin Henderson, LinkedIn at Colin Henderson, 2 L's. Go to Amazon. I've written 7 books, 2 journals. Just search Colin Henderson books there. I think those would probably be the best 3 spots.
Fantastic.
And podcast. Where's the podcast?
Oh yeah, podcast is Master Your Mindset: Tools to Win the Inner Game. So I think we have 211 shows.
Amazing. Folks, check it out. Colin, thank you for being here. We appreciate you tuning in to another episode. Until next time, peace.
Thank you for being part of the Hustle Nation. If you're serious about raising the bar in your personal and professional life and willing to go all in on your success, head over to hustleleaders.com. Here you can get access to our Hustle Productivity ebook, attend our Hustle Masterclass, or challenge yourself to the 30-day Hustle Challenge. Pairing these tools and training with the Hustle Nation podcast will help you advance to a whole new level. Until next time, stay hungry and inspire those around you to hustle.